We are back and ready to get into our match 2 of the day, which is going to be Yalla versus Swidz as we take on that upper bracket match. And this is where it could all get very simple for Yalla. Having a bye already in Group B, it means he's only potentially got to play one match today, and this is it. If he takes a win, we're going to see him tomorrow in that top 4 bracket. If he takes a loss, he'll be knocked down into the elimination lower portion of Group B, but still looking pretty good for Yalla overall, as he has earned that right with his performance in Division A this season. But he's going to be going up against Swidz, who looks like he might be feeling it today. He might be playing pretty on point based on what we saw last series.
Yeah, Yalla has what I would like to call the APAC caster route through the tournament bracket, where you just get to show up, just do about an hour's work, and then put your feet up and let everyone else do the rest of the work for you after that. So it's a pretty good job if you can get it.
Yeah, not too bad at all. Somehow I got downgraded down to the European casting role of 12-hour days. So we'll see how that pans out going forward. We'll see where people are maybe for Season 2. But let's go into this match. Big story for me here is not only Yalla's incredible performance this season and last year too, but also just this lineup. I like it all. Maybe apart from that Galacrond Warlock, which I do think is just a test. We've seen Highland Hunter perform very well over the past few weeks for the players who have included it in their lineup, so I've got no issues there, but it really is just this Galacrond Warlock for me, and it might be the make or break.
Yeah, it might, and we get to see how it performs again, which is something that I've very much been looking forward to. Now, I've been critical of the Bring, and I will continue to do so. It's just where I stand. I don't really understand what Galacrond Warlock is really doing for his lineups. But at the same time, he's doing something right. At least at time of recording of Week 6 Hot Takes, Jarla was the highest win rate player across all 3 seasons of GM in the European region, which I would argue is the hardest region to have a high win rate in. So, arguably, he's the best player in Europe, and arguably, he's one of the best players in the world. So, if he's bringing these slightly off-the-wall choices, if he wants to have a pet deck, something that he feels comfortable with, and he's still performing at the level that he is so far, then, more power to him.
Yeah, and that's where sometimes you see in Hearthstone it gets a bit strange, because a deck could look bad or not look correct, but if a player keeps winning, then who are we to say, oh, well, don't play that deck you're winning matches with, play a deck we want you to play, right? That's just not how it's going to work.
Hey, Raven, we spent 3 weeks telling people not to leave up Warrior, and players were winning the series when they did that, so,
I'm not saying we won't keep doing it. We just shouldn't, I think, is the key point. He is going to be going up against Swidz, though, who, based on last series, looks like he's having a good day already, with not only taking the win over Silvername, but also doing it in very, I think, just secure fashion, right? His play felt very clean, maybe outside of that, the Dream situation, which, again, wasn't wrong. He just made a meal out of...
You can't criticize it. It was lethal. It was fine.
Extended lethal. But let's go straight into this game. No messing about. You can see Yalla's score there from the round robin. 5-2 in Division A of the European Grandmasters. That's about as tough as it's going to get at the moment in Hearthstone. And Yalla was sat on top there. But he's going to be kicking off with this Galacrond Warlock. So I'm excited to see what this can do.
Yeah, just for a second I had a little bit of a double take, even though we just talked about it. I just sort of,
Oh, the Abyssal.
Yeah, I just had a double take, okay, Craze Nether Wing, Rain of Fire, Abyssal Summoner, yep, okay, let's get into some Quest Warlock. Wait, Shield of Galacrond. Oh, yeah, right, we just talked about this 15 seconds ago, that makes sense.
You're like, is Shield of Galacrond just a good taunt minion?
No.
Well, there we go, question answered, solved.
Yeah.
He's going to be going up against Swidz' Druid though, and although, of course, as we just mentioned, it isn't Quest Warlock versus Druid, and we talked earlier about how tough that matchup is, but it is similar. It is still going to be Warlock. The removal, I would say, is better in some ways, but not that much different in others, right? Because for Plague of Flames, you still need to make a board to be able to do that, and often with, say, Mount Seller turns, those boards are quite wide. So it really is going to be on Yalla to set up for those big removal turns to get it done.
Yeah, I think the one big difference, though, maybe the one big benefit that Galacrond Warlock has in this matchup is that they are better at the beat you up plan, which you know, Quest Warlock doesn't really execute that successfully unless they're able to go Abyssal into Abyssal, and it's been a slow start from the Druid. It doesn't really materialize. Whereas Galakron Warlock can curve out pretty much from 3 to 9 just by playing minions and putting pressure on the opponent if they're given the opportunity to do so. So I think even then, the addition of that one Abyssal Summoner to the deck that we've talked about just goes to show that maybe this is exactly where he's leaning this at, right? Like, he's expecting some Druid. He wants to play a control-ish style of Warlock because, honestly, the decks aren't that different. Like, this is still a control and removal and mid-rangey threats-based deck, which then kind of has a combo finisher at the end of the game where you just play Galakron and then Alexstrasza your opponent and smash them with your Claw and some Nether Breaths. Like, it still kind of does the same thing, right? But this version of the deck just plays all these additional mid-game threats that you can tempo out against Druid and actually put some pressure on them.
Yeah, one is just extremely minion focused versus spell focused, right? Which the Quest Warlock is 9 times out of 10. So it plays out so far, though. Yalla does have those 2 imps on the board, and he can just stay on curve here and just have this Devoted Maniac get played down. And suddenly he's looking at, what, 5 minions on board versus Druid this early in the game? Doesn't seem too bad to me. Because there's no swipe, right, for Swidz, although there is the Starfall, of course, as we saw in the previous series. It's not like Druids are really playing swipe at the moment, so these minions are quite safe and not really a board that now Swidz wants to play into. Even if he had Mount Seller and a couple of 0-cost cards, well, if he doesn't clear the whole board, he could just get plagued anyway. So it's a bit tricky now for Swidz to navigate, I think.
Yeah. Particularly because right now, Swidz is just on a ramp to nowhere. Like, he is 10 mana and nothing to do with it whatsoever. Meanwhile, in Yalla land, continue to play Invoke cards.
Is it so crazy to get Krunks down this turn? Is that just being silly? It probably is, right? I know he's not going to play the Galakron soon, but it's just a bigger minion. And he can just follow up with more tokens afterwards.
Nah, don't think it's worth coin just for the 2 extra attack in play. It's just his curve, right? Like, you just end up playing that curve weirdly backwards where you go coin Kronks into Shield of Galakron unless you top deck something specific next turn to get you off that plan. Just don't think it's worth the coin usage.
Yeah. The only thing I was considering was if something does happen, i.e. Swidz makes a board this turn, because Yalla doesn't actually have Plague available, he might end up wanting to Netherwing. And then that could delay some of the turn, but I suppose that ends up being fine anyway. I do always just look if you can play, like, the safest possible moment you can play Krunks if you're planning on playing it to draw the Galakron. Like, when is the earliest you can just play it and with no real repercussions?
Sure.
But now, though, looks pretty safe to me, although it does make it a bit of an easier board for Swidz to play into, again, with a potential Mount Seller.
Right. And Yalla saw Swidz hold on to an excess mana on that turn, suggesting that Mount Seller might be coming. Of course, Swidz is just holding on to it here because there was just no real reason to use it. He would never be using the card that he drew that turn anyway, so he might as well hold on to it and just, in the case that he top decks Mount Seller.
Or even to a certain extent, Ysera, right? Because you could still play Ysera and then draw a card, try and hit a dragon.
Sorry, what an idiotic boob I was 5 or 10 seconds ago. I forgot that Swidz just has 10 mana and can play every card in his deck when he draws it.
One big note as well is, although there is the Plague of Flames for Yalla, which is a huge removal tool, there isn't the Kelidan and there isn't the Twisted Nether. So there isn't just the hard one-button go, removal that Quest Warlock does have access to.
Oh, I love Galakron Warlock, dude. Like, even if I don't think it's like a super high power level deck, it's just so pure in its game plan. You just play Invoke cards and hit your opponent. That's all you do.
So just as an Invoke check, I believe he's on 3?
He is.
Is that correct? So he could just go Shield of Galakron now. Builds a big board again with a to threaten Plague of Flames. Looks fine to me. Could even coil one of the imps if he really feels like it. It's also unfortunate for Swidz, and this is something that the Druid does run into of this build, is you only actually really run, 5 threats in your deck? There are games where you don't really draw them that quickly,
yeah.
and you might miss them for a bit.
Yep. "13 cards remaining. Ysera down there, double Mount Seller down there, double Glowfly Swarm down there.
Let's go up to 10 cards.
Excess mana again. He used cheap card draw to try and find something he can actually do this turn. Doesn't hit it. Rising Winds can still get him there.
Was there a reason Yalla tapped?
Because he has everything he needs, pretty much, and he just wants to get closer to activating the 2 Highlander cards in his hand, would be my guess.
I guess so.
He doesn't really care if he burns cards, he just doesn't want them to be in his deck, because he just wants those 2 game enders to be active.
That's true, yeah, I didn't actually quite see the Zephyrs there, but reasonable. I'll let you off for that explanation. Yalla, you win this round.
Hey, if you're going to bring Galakron Warlock every week, you're going to know what you're doing when you play it, right?
This is a good setup, though, because suddenly, a little bit of a harder board to deal with, and Swidz is sitting on double Savage Roar. And there's even the Bog Beam and the Crystal Power if he needs a removal of an awkward taunt in the way. That is a ton of damage. Even if only half this board sticks after the whole turn's over.
Bog Beams are 1-1. Yeah, Acidic Swampoo's biting the dust, no big deal here. So the clears are available, but more importantly, is there just lethal this turn? I don't think so.
So Moag Breath gets through, right? Oh, I guess just Breath Coil gets through.
Yeah, the problem is he needs, like, the Galakron weapon and the Breath to all go face at the end to achieve lethal. Which I
so
don't
it's 6,
think
10,
is
sorry,
possible.
15, right?
I'm at least not seeing it, but Yalla might be about to make me look stupid here.
No, I don't think so. I think he's just setting up for the clear, right? Just to play this Coil. And then he has Moag and Rain of Fire.
Yep.
I like it. Just look, this is about as threatening as the board's ever going to be. So clean this up and then secure the game next turn. I like this from Yalla. Does kill off his own taunt, but again, with nothing on board for Swidz, Yalla's feeling pretty safe at 20 health.
Yeah, and actually none of his important minions ended up dying here.
Right. I believe you're supposed to do that on the Mount Seller, Swidz, from what I've read.
It's just overflowing instead.
Yeah.
He just doesn't really have a Mount Seller turn.
He's got to try and
I'm
not
not sure
die.
what he's drawing to, though. He's just out of removal, right? Like, I don't even see what he's drawing.
I think he's just hoping there's no Galakron or Nether Breath.
The Kronk's got played.
Oh, of course, right? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so if he can't... Oh, wait, he can Crystal Power Moonfire the 5/5?
Sure.
Which kills it off?
Yep. Seems better than healing for 5, but okay.
Yep. Well, we can see with especially the Nether Breaths in hand, ready to go, and the Alex Straza there to proc them. That is going to be game. And honestly, Swidz, on one hand, did not get to his threats early enough, but also we could see that Yalla had so many good answers just sat and waiting, and there was one of the most awkward boards possible there, which was the huge Glowfly with Solar Forest, with one of them taunted up, and Yalla had the ability to dissect it there, so it looked pretty powerful in that specific game. So yeah, I guess at least for now, this Galakron Warlock has paid off today.
Yeah, it certainly did. And I think you can almost see from Yalla's little satisfied nod to himself at the end there that, I think that is a matchup that he had in mind when he, A, brought this deck and B, built it the way he did. But I will say, like, one board got made that game by Druid. And Yalla he got to wait until he caught up on mana to his opponent before he actually had to deal with a board, which is enormous in the first place. He then had to use basically every piece of removal in his hand to deal with that one board that was made from the opponent. So you can still see the difference between what happened in that game and just, big early Glowfly, followed up by the Mount Seller, followed up by Ysera, 2 or 3 dragons come out, then 4 more dragons come out the next turn. You're going to run out of removal in that world pretty often when you're that kind of deck. But I do think the absolute kicker is just the amount of pressure that you can put on as Galakron Warlock in that matchup that you just can't really achieve the same level of with Quest Warlock. So maybe it is just a smart bring this week. Maybe Yala's just seeing the Matrix on it this time. I haven't been a fan in previous weeks, and maybe I'm just being super results oriented because I just watched it crush a extremely bad draw from the Druid, but seemed successful at least.
Yeah, and maybe that's the question, right? Is Quest Warlock good? Well, the player can decide that, but does Galakron Warlock do well enough in those matchups the Quest Warlock's good in anyway, and then do slightly less bad against Druid? If that's the case, then yeah, maybe the deck does just slot in, and maybe a few more players should have brought it if this was the game plan. But we'll have to see how it plays out tomorrow as well. As obviously we will not see it again. We might see it again actually if Yalla loses. We could see Galakron Warlock get played again, but if it's going to go this way, Yalla's looking pretty good. Let's go into the next game. It's going to be Demon Hunter versus Rogue coming up. And double Shadow Step opening hand for Swidz. Looks like at least some of that's going to go bye-bye. Not a bad offering here for Yalla, but I do imagine, yeah, he's going to get rid of that. Definitely the Metamorphosis, but also the Twin Slice. And there's the Bone Chewer Brawler ready for Yalla, but a little bit more susceptible against Rogue as there are those removal tools and exactly the Sealed Fates to deal with it pretty cleanly. We'll have to see if it plays out like that. Switz, just as a reminder, is running that stealth package Rogue and not the secret questing that we've getting used to seeing.
Interesting. Here's the play that I wanted Boston to make yesterday, that Swidz then immediately snaps out on his turn, just drops his Praise Galakron, gets the Lackey in hand. Very different looking hand context to the one that Boston had as well, which I also find interesting.
No stealth minions out for this Greyheart Sage, though. A little bit frustrating. There is just Coin Evil Miscreant, because there's always the Eviscerate afterwards to clean up this Bone Chewer. If the emergency requires.
I wonder.
Yeah, you've also got a combination of 3 lackeys on the following turn then, which, obviously Kobold Lackey is nutty, but you can also just straight up get Rush Lackey to rush one of the other lackeys or the Faceless Lackey target into it.
Yeah.
Yep, that looks like a pretty good combination to me.
But now the plan to build the ultimate Bone Chewer Brawler is a go. His Beaming Psychic gives it more health, which in a roundabout way can give it more attack as well.
I got you, friend.
Did you take a bump here? Let's play around Backstab, Seal Fate kind of stuff. It's going to walk into the Abyss, but seems good to me.
One of the interactions I really liked when it was in, I think, one of Surrender's earlier Highlander Hunters was Bone Chewer Brawler and the Orc Merchant. So you deal 1 damage, but then give it Divine Shield.
Right.
So it actually ends up being like, whoa, this thing's actually just going to kill me in a minute. What's going on? It was actually pretty sick. I'm not going to see that in this list, of course, but still, just a nice interaction. We may see a little bit more in the future.
Swidz, why didn't you put secrets in your deck, you fool?
Here, though, pretty awful turn for Yalla. You can get rid of this board, but it costs him a lot. I guess he does have the strong power plays for turn 5 and 6. But still, a little bit meager on the old board development for this turn.
I grow impatient.
Do you think he wants to hold? Because if he's planning on actually going for the Warglaves, then this Phase Stalker is actually just dealt with just in a turn's time anyway.
Yeah, I
Seems
do. It's
reasonable.
what I'm leaning towards. I personally believe that, you know, two slices in hand is more valuable than just 2 extra damage, which is probably what you end up taking here in most scenarios. You're scared of Titanic lackeys, I guess, that you could have coming down, protect things. Yalla disagrees, though. He's just going to take care of it immediately.
Okay. This does still give him some level of flexibility, though, because now he still has Warglaves Go or Second Slice Gladebound Adept.
Sure.
So it's not like he's thrown away the Gladebound Adept option. It's just weaker. Yeah, I did wonder there if he could just wait. Maybe worried about Titanic Lackey making the trades a little bit more awkward, or just soaking up more than one swing.
Who in their right mind hides loot?
So it's just said, no, I know what your turn 5s want to be, and I am giving you 0 targets to be able to leverage that Gladebound Adept or that Warglaves that you have in your hand right now. It's a pretty easy read to make this time around based on how poor Yalla's openings have been.
Yeah.
And those cards have just been stuck over there on the far left. They're Skull, Metamorphosis, Gladebound, or Warglaves basically all the time here.
And this is one of those weird choices with Demon Hunter. Yalla has some powerful turn 5 plays, but as you said, they aren't as powerful now because of how the board state looks. Does Yalla ever bail a little bit here and go for Chaos Strike just to try and cycle through the deck? Because if he's sticking to these power plays, then that's 2 more turns of not getting an extra card draw from this Chaos Strike. And that might just slow him down a little bit and just weaken some of his options. And maybe while this isn't a strong Warglaves or a strong Adept turn, maybe he can just go for the cycle. It feels wrong, just based on just looking at you can do a strong turn 5 play or cycle and hope. But I think it is something to consider in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, I take your point, but personally I think playing Warglaves here increases your options for the following turns, more so than just seeing an extra card in your deck does. Just having that mana allocated so that you know, Satyr Overseer gets drawn either this turn or off the Chaos Strike next turn. Sorry, like off the natural draw or off the Chaos Strike next turn if you're going to go down that line. Suddenly you just have this, you know, immediately invested Warglaves that can just basically undo everything that's happened in this early game and just completely swing the board state back your way.
If Swidz had got the got access to his Shadow Weaver, though, that would have been maybe a single tier from Jarla with that turn. That is the one real big punish that Swidz does run. He runs 1 Shadow Weaver in his list.
Yes. No ooze, no weapon destruction, just that 1 frozen Shadow Weaver.
Fate awaits you in the ashes.
Oh!
Well, there it is.
Oh,
Too late, though.
Shadows. I must choose soon.
Oh, very much rewarded from Yalla. Again, these stealth minions are so frustrating, though.
Yeah, Yalla can make 2 tokens with the help of that Satyr and the attacks, or he can make 3, sorry, with an attack to face. But 2 of them are technically already dead, right? Because the Skyvateer and the Dagger Swing, plus the 3-1 as well. So it doesn't feel quite as powerful, but maybe it's just good enough. He can Chaos Strike as well that turn, which means, again, he doesn't really need the extra attack, but it is more attack to face. And also...
Demons.
I now outside his Chaos Strike.
He is. I wonder whether Yalla might get greedy with it and try and wait 1 more turn for an even bigger swing, just invest some health. Maybe just drop Gladebound this turn with 1 swing. Let the board develop a little bit more, maybe let these stealth minions attack and then go for it on the follow-up instead.
I guess the question is, though, what if Switz doesn't attack with the stealth minions, and then does the turn actually get worse because you've done it later?
Yeah, that is also my fear. Chaos Strike last. Okay, sure, I guess.
We're with you.
Now, though, there is Shadow Weaver. You can even prep out Eviscerate and go for Van Cleef if Swidz really wants to. Seems pretty strong to me.
So many options.
Does. Thanks to the Kobold Lackey, that's going to be the whole board state cleared up as well, and a giant 10-10 hitting the board.
I'm not going to get the Shadow Weaver though, so it does allow Yalla to get an attack off and leverage this Glaive-bound Adept to deal some extra damage, or just freeze it himself! Oh!
So you're saying there's a chance. Is there a chance? He needs help next turn as well. Like, what is that help? Skull off the top?
Demons.
Another Shadow Weaver.
number 2 off the top? Yeah.
Demons.
Because even then, like, what's the rest of his turn? Shadow Weaver Ooze? What are you attacking? You hitting these 1/1s with your 4-attack weapon
impatient.
swing? This is all very upsetting, Raven.
He has to freeze the Cleave, right?
Well, does he? There's the question. If he's only, like, assuming he only draws one Frozen Shadow Weaver before he dies, does it matter if he freezes it this turn or next turn?
Wait, he can go...
Is it cold in the
Hey, if he had just one more damage, I'd even suggest just tanking down the Cleave and just presuming you're winning the long game, but he just doesn't.
You just take 20.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If you had one more damage, you could do it in one swing with the Glaive Bound. So if he still had, say, Twin Slice, he could have actually made that work with just one hit and Glaive Bound. Can trade off this Ooze first with the dagger, if he wants to, see what the draw is, and then follow up with a Shield of Galakrond to help protect this Van Cleave.
So many options.
Do you think drawing first, though, might be important? This is, I guess, kind of card draw with the Pharaoh Cat. Could get something that he wants to play instead. Card-up Defender, Bone Ray, so on.
Your skill.
Not going to trade off the Skyver tier, okay.
I was wondering, obviously you lose a Frozen Shadow Weaver from your own hand, which is incredibly important, but I was kind of curious about just flicking the Frozen Shadow Weaver that turn, just because it shuts down the one outer top deck, which is kind of the only good card Yalla has right now. I don't know.
Yeah, and although, you, like you said, you lose your own, you still gain a 4/4 on the board, right? So it's not like, you know, it's a completely blank turn. I think the problem really is then the Ooze just sticks around and there's no taunt, so maybe that actually, like, doesn't make up for the fact. Maybe the Ooze is the damage that's needed. I wouldn't have hated it, though.
Patient.
Yeah, I think this play was fine. I'm just looking at sort of purposefully cute things he could have done that turn.
I think it has to be Skull here for Yalla. He needs something big.
Demons. Demons.
What would the best Skull be here? Altruis? Frozen
He's
Shadow
used both
Weaver.
Twin Slices already. That's the problem with the Altruis.
Oh yeah, but if he goes Altruis, Frozen Shadow Weaver, like I-Beam would probably be the best consecutive three draws he could get. Gonna go for the face damage and say okay. It's 13, 14 with dagger, so Swidz needs 2 damage.
He currently does not have 2 damage.
Yeah, needs is also a bit of an extreme word. He can go for the draw, but most importantly, he can just clear off this board with the help of this flick. He can flick away the Glaive Bound, just clear off the whole board, and then just say, well, instead of me needing 2 damage, you need to make a whole board again and deal 14, which I think is a much more reasonable thing to do from Switz's point.
Cold in the shadows.
Yeah, I think once the 10-10 Edwin came down, we're really going to struggle about relevant, impactful choices the players could make this game. I think any play he makes this turn where the 10-10 goes face and he's not dead to Hearthstone cards is probably just about fine.
Yeah, it really does. You know, the level 1 always kicks in of, can Yalla deal with Van Cleef? No? Okay, well, what's the not worst thing he can do with his turn to not die?
Yeah.
Probably the worst card to draw as well, because it also draws a card that he has to try and play before he skulls. It's kind of why I like just going for skull last turn and just trying to just draw the absolute nuts cards.
Yeah, he just has to dump the second slice out of the way, though, here instead. Finds Metamorphosis, and nothing.
Nope. So, that looks like it is going to clean it up, because he can't even face tank, and even if he could, he would be dead! But also, he can't really get much done here. The draw, one last one, does not run anything to do with his Van Cleef. That's going to be a concede from Yalla, and Switz evens up the series 1-1 here. So a bit of a crazy game. Of course, the Van Cleef really blew it wide open, but again, you just start to see that even without the Van Cleef being quite as big as it was, if that was just a regular-sized minion per se, like Rogue definitely does have some game against Demon Hunter if it can get to that mid to late game, right? There are options, whether that's some taunt, whether that's getting to Galacrond, but even just some of the stall options and some of the things that the lackeys unlock as well.
Yeah, and it's, you know, a big part of the reason why I waved the flag for Stealth Rogue for so long through the early parts of the season, because you can see just some of the impact that those minions have in that matchup. When Spy Mistress and Skyvateer were in play, when Swidz just went, okay, Skyvateer pass into your turn 5, well, suddenly Demon Hunter's just like, well, hang on, this was the turn where I was supposed to kill all of your minions and gain an advantage out of it, and you just don't let them do that. You get to dictate all the trades with all of these annoying little sticky minions that hang around on the board, and I think it's very, very impactful in that matchup, and also allows you to set up those mid-game race scenarios that you were talking about, because you kind of have this guaranteed minion presence. As much as stealth minions are guaranteed trading tools, they're also guaranteed face damage a lot of the time against Demon Hunter.
And now we are going to go into game number 3. Swidz on this Druid and Yalla on his Hunter. We've talked a bit about Swidz's Druid so far today. Yalla's Hunter, just at a quick glance, looks fairly standard, although he is running that Mana Saber along there. So a little bit of a difference and a little bit of an extra card, or a different card, should I say, that can be drawn from scavengers. But overall, the list seems pretty standard outside of that one card. It is a super weird matchup, this. It goes one of a couple of ways. The Hunter just starts the game like Hunter does and just starts to curve out. If the Druid, either A, can't answer the minions because they're the dragons are evasive, or the Druid can actually go for a Glowfly. And then the big question then flips to Hunter and says, well, can you either answer this, or you have a big enough or threat enough board that you can ignore it, and by going face, still basically force the Druid player to respond and have to trade away. If you can't, then the Hunter really starts to lose ground after a Glowfly sticks.
Glowfly sticks coming to a rave near you. Well, I was going to say Switz has a pretty good-looking curve here before this Dwarven Sharpshooter got drawn, because he could have actually just panthered on this turn and then curved out through his ramp while using the Panther to protect himself for a little bit, but it's not quite looking so appealing anymore. You could still do it. Like, honestly, occupying Hunter's hero power here and stopping them from playing a Fairy Dragon and Imprisoned Felmore or any like big threatening thing that can actually cause you problems might actually be worth the investment of the card.
I don't hate it. If playing this Power of the Wild makes you play Wild Growth into a 1/3, I think that seems okay. I'm with you. Honestly, the only problem, or the only extra thing to consider, is Swidz is only playing one Power of the Wild because he is playing that Starfall, and that's the card cut he's gone for, so he does only have one of those.
He does still have 2 Savage Roar, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on board. I think if you get to play Wild Growth into just the Dwarven Sharpshooter, you're looking pretty good.
Victory.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm like not sold on the play, but I think I kind of went through the roller coaster myself of thinking, actually, okay, this curve is sick. Then Dwarven Sharpshooter came off the top for Yalla, and I was like, oh, okay, that sucks. But then the more I think about it, like, maybe that's just fine. Maybe you just let that happen, and then there's not this additional 3/2 on the board smacking you.
But now, the way it's going to add up with the wild growth and then overgrowth, it does mean that Swidz, when he can play his Mount Seller, is going to be able to play around with just a tiny bit extra mana as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yalla's starting to do the tough things, though, against Swidz, and he's just curving out. They're not the best minions in the world to curve out with against Druid, but they are minions that are good enough for now. And again, suddenly, what, 6, 7? 7 more damage minimum plus a minion. I think if this is a dud draw, okay, it's not necessarily. I did wonder whether it's just coin faceless here to make that 1-3 a 4-4. And then even with a Mount Seller turn, is that really going to be good enough to beat this board?
That's the question, right? Is against Mount Seller, would you rather have 2 4 health minions on board now that resist bog beams and whatnot? Or would you rather just play a different minion and have the Faceless Corruptor from hand, assuming at least one thing lives on the following turn, and then actually get to utilize the rush? I think it's actually pretty close.
Yeah. The only issue I've got is if you do it the Faceless Corruptor way round first, you have the Dragon and you have Corrosive Breath to follow up with.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually just gets to, I think, utilize the mana a little bit more smoothly, because if they don't Mount Seller, well, fantastic, you're doing great. If they do Mount Seller, Corrosive Breath kills a lot of beasts that get summoned, right? As in, it doesn't kill many of them, it just kills one of them on average. See, I think I actually like just going for the Faceless there.
Huh.
Well, it's going to be a Glowfly turn. Because we could see... Well, the problem with Mount Seller... What, Mount Seller Moonfire? That's not good enough.
No. But 4 2/2s? I mean, I guess 4 3/3s, sure.
Yeah. And
Is
the
that
problem
good
is... it's better than one Mount Seller.
Yeah,
because
sure.
if trade into the Beast, Rot Nest happens... Oh, you're in trouble. You're in big, big trouble. So I think this is just going to have to be a bridge. You see Swidz isn't happy about this turn because it is not great. Right. But I do think this has to be play Glowfly, hope my opponent trades into them, and then hope my draws are good next.
Yeah, and he was frustrated specifically about the Ysera draw off the top, I believe, because, you know, I misspoke. It wouldn't have been 4, it would have been 5 in most scenarios, because he Rising Winds finds an additional spell, and he still retains the twin spell version of the Rising Winds the majority of the time. But he hit one of his very few minions, which means he has an extremely underpowered Glowfly Swarm here. And it also means, because he drew a minion, not only is this Glowfly weaker, but his Mount Seller now remains weak for the following turn as well.
Vengeance is near.
So it's just not getting the business with this Druid right now. Just ramping into nothing in both of the games that we've seen him playing so far.
And this was my point, right? A lot of the time, the Glowfly to cause a huge issue has to come down on curve for the Druid.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't the case, which lets Yalla build up a big enough board to... he can either choose to ignore it or do the powerful enough things that he still comes out on top after a trade. Whereas if this was a little bit earlier, it's not necessarily the case. Or a little bit wider, I guess, as well.
Yalla probably thinking with great interest about what Switz's hand is here, because he does have a lot of options. Boom Pistol Bully, for example, would lock out Ysera Unleashed Ironbark this turn, but I don't think he's scared of that because he still has the Poison minion in play. So Ysera Unleashed Ironbark Moonfire would be the combination that he would need to get punished by. And lo and behold...
And he 100% knows there's a Mount Seller in hand. That was 100%. It's whether the hand is 2 Mount Sellers or 1 Mount Seller, 1 Ysera.
Why does he know that?
Because they're the only minions in the deck, right?
There's
he plays
only
Glowfly and he can count.
Sorry.
So he knew there were 2 minions.
I was thinking this is Dragon Druid for a second.
No. Yeah, yeah. He knows there were 2 minions. One obviously has to be a Mount Seller because there's only 3 actual minions. So then it's either Ysera or a second Mount Seller. No bog beams though is insanely huge here for Yalla. if these were bog beams just clearing off these faceless corruptors, the game starts to look very different. Oh, that's not bad either. The Griffin plus the Corrosive Breath deals a ton of extra damage from hand.
Means no, I think he's one off.
Victory is in my grasp.
Right? If he Griffins the Taunt, plays Corrosive Breath, Swidz is at 10. The Mount Seller is at 8.
Yeah, one off.
Yeah, so 6 more goes in, and then only 9 goes face. Oh,
I think being one off looks okay, though. I guess he's just got to worry about what's on the pack swing.
Vengeance is
And
mine.
Crystal Powers, of which he's seen 0, I believe.
correct, yep.
And of course, although Yalla had opportunities to play the coin earlier this game, the fact that he hasn't means Yalla can arguably take it a tiny bit slower because he does have that Dragon Queen Alexstrasza and he has the Nagrand Slam. But that is still a while away, and I'm not sure his cover is actually good enough to just get him there safely. So I do like this overall. Put him to 1, make Switz have heal 100%.
Rising Winds, only out, find an overflow. Crystal Power
second
technically
Savage
keeps
Roar
him
would do
alive
it.
as well, but it's not winning. Oh wow, would it? I didn't even count in that direction.
Oh, double Savage Roar just always gets there.
So it'd be 12 plus 8 plus 8 plus 1 from Hero Power, yeah, would have been.
But the Innovate, probably the worst draw he could have possibly got. Just effectively
How
unplayable here.
curious.
Mm-hmm.
So now he has to go for the trade, but the problem is he can't arm up outside of this, so...
He's just dead.
Yep, this is just the problem here, and Yalla did just get off to a solid start. It wasn't even the best start. He didn't get any of the early dragons, didn't get the Stormhammer, but he got stuff, most importantly, right? He had stuff to play on curve.
And he found it, Raven. He might have taken the most complicated route to lethal in the Rogue versus Mage game, but he found the simplest route to lethal in that one.
He really did just move 5 face, get the job done. But Yalla does win with his Hunter against the Druid. And again, it is it feels kind of bad to just describe a matchup in such simplicity, but sometimes we do have matchups like that because the Hunter very consistently does just curve out and go highly aggressive. If there's not that wall of Glowflies on curve or a very strong Mount Cell turn, of course, with some ramp, then Hunter's already done too much of its work to recover from in most scenarios. I will say though, the fact that Swidz didn't have bog beams to go, post that 7 mana turn, he had spells, but he can actually clear up enough of the board. If he had bog beams, maybe it looks a little bit better, a little bit safer, but it just wasn't good enough in that game.
Yeah, and I'm also curious about how much health you preserve just by playing a 3-2 on turn 2 there as well, where, maybe the Exotic Swampu still comes down, maybe it doesn't, maybe the Hero Power hits it, but either way, you either get to trade down the 3-2 and it doesn't hit you a bunch of times, or it's just not in play and it doesn't hit you a bunch of times. So saving maybe 6 health over the course of the game, don't think it would have mattered in that scenario. I think he still would have died on the same turn, the way the draws panned out, because he just didn't really hit the gas to keep his hand size high, didn't really hit the healing to be able to sustain a lot of the time, but something interesting to look at least.
Yeah, and now we get to see what's left here for Swidz. It's good and bad, right? He has his Warrior, good matchup versus Yalla's Demon Hunter. He also still has his Druid, a terrible matchup versus Yalla's Demon Hunter. So we'll have to see if he can pull it out of the bag here, because the Druid still has to do something pretty magnificent to get a win versus Yalla's last deck.
It does, but it is running that Starfall in there, which we saw pay out huge, and is a big part of the reason why he's even here. And Silvername is in the lower bracket right now. I think that's a big part of the whole reason I set up Swidz is why Swidz is here. I should say, and get my tongue around that in any way whatsoever.
I know what you mean.
A huge part of the reason why Swidz is here in the first place is that he's just made good tech decisions, he's built good lineups, and I think he's had the right archetypes for the right situation. And I think, again, just the Starfall here is a big part of the reason, immediately contributing to why he's playing against Yalla, and I think his deck building in general is long-term a big part of the reason why his season has been successful.
Well, let's kick it off. Swidz. Going to be choosing his warrior first to go up against Yalla's Demon Hunter, so he's going for the better matchup first. He has to win with both of his decks though, so it doesn't matter in the long run. Yalla with a pretty solid opening for his Demon Hunter though.
Swidz with a pretty nutty looking opener for the warrior though. Risky Skipper, Armorsmith and Warmaul Challenger all locked and loaded, ready to go. Has the Rampage to actually make the Warmaul Challenger threatening after it takes down a 1-1 here.
Might be a quick one, Sol, based on this hand. Would you like any more of your game-winning cards? It's probably worth a coin now, right?
Yeah, I'm liking Coin Challenger here.
Going out, going to the 1-1, would you suggest? To just give it the most health possible? More likely to be able to hit that with the duplicate? Or at least the Rampage.
Yeah. You remember the old casterism of like you give a minion Wind Fury if you double trade into it? That's kind of like more appropriate in this scenario
Yeah.
if you kill the 2-2 instead of a 1-1.
I'm gonna win big.
Tough call here. Metamorphosis is all, being able to run 2 Metamorphoses is just a ton of damage, but you've got to make sure you even put yourself in that position. So for me, maybe it is just the Chaos Strike. Currently, Yalla does not have tons to do next turn, just that Blazing Battle Mage in hand. Maybe just Chaos Strike's good enough. And even if Yalla's planning on just jamming it into this Warmaul Challenger, I think that's a completely fine plan.
Demons. Demons. Time grows short.
Yep, just go for the Chaos Strike. Not only is it going to give him some cycle, but also being able to put some extra damage into this Challenger potentially next turn looks pretty good. And we are going to see if he goes all in on bringing this Challenger's health down, though. He did pop it with the Battle Mage, but not going to swing with his weapon, and not going to put the 1-1 in.
It's so miserable, right? Just this situation where, obviously we can see this is worst case scenario where Switz is actually going to punish with the Bloodsworn Mercenary and the Rampage over the course of a couple of turns. I'm always curious to see which order this happens in, because I think there are arguments to do it both ways, and I think hand context really has a big impact on that, where, making multiple big minions here early on gives you better battle rage on the following turn. It also just allocates your mana more efficiently. Whereas, of course, just copying the already Rampage minion, I mean, the benefits of that should be obvious. But even when they don't have the punish, from the Demon Hunter side, you just always have to expect that they do, and you always have to respect that threat and just sink so much damage into a 110. It's just a horrible feeling.
I just imagine if this damage was going face, like Switz would be on 16 or something now, right? Literally on half of his health. But it's just not good enough, because the second Swidz gets to do some powerful plays with this, it loses Yalla the game. It's just pretty crazy.
Second Bloodsworn! Second Battle Rage! Imagine having to play a weapon to win this matchup so that you run into your opponent's tech cards. I want you to actually imagine it, Raven.
Very rough here from Yalla. He can swing, but the problem is even the swing Glaive Bound just still does not kill this Challenger.
Curious about this turn. I don't think it necessarily has to be the second Battle Rage, because I think that second Battle Rage is going to be good pretty much any point of the game past this point when you have such a powerful risky skipper hand with Bomb Wranglers and Armor Smiths and so on. But at the same time, a 3-card rage is a 3-card rage. So yeah, you can just go ahead and take it here.
Yeah, this seems just pretty good, right? You're already so far ahead. Why not just get a little bit further and get even more options to help deal with whatever Yalla can put in the way. It's going to be Skull of Gul'dan here. But Yalla just trying to get something a little bit stronger and also just feed that potential Altruist turn to help have something that's a big swing. Because one thing that Yalla does have just at the moment is some time, right? He hasn't actually been pressured down by Swidz or anything like that. This is now shaping up to be one pretty large Altruist turn.
It is, and honestly, Yalla has done an incredibly commendable job of staying in this matchup. I was talking about all the ugly things that you have to do when your opponent gets this insane start with the Warmaul challenges, but Yalla has done everything the right way to be able to not be falling behind in this position. He still has plenty of health to play with, as I was talking about in the previous series, is actually a very relevant factor. And honestly, the board is not getting too messy just yet.
And I think that was one of the interesting points, although it looked very powerful earlier on. It was one of those tough situations of, do you Rampage first or Bloodsworn first, right?
Yeah,
because that's one thing I don't think was really that obvious, but because it was Bloodsworn first, it allowed Yalla to freely dump damage into the minions because he wasn't taking much back. Right, which, as you mentioned, because Yalla has so much health now, he can or has been able to be a little bit more greedy and go for these big card draw turns.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I think Swidz went for the play that was the most mana efficient, so he spent 3 on turn 3 and 4 on turn 4 the way he did it, which certainly makes sense. But yeah, as I mentioned at the time, I'm always interested in the sequencing with that particular hand because I think there are extremely high merits to doing things either way.
Well, let's see if this Altruist is good at dodging bombs. Nope. Look at Switz!
Wow!
He may as well have shouted goal at that point.
Step up!
Oh, insane.
I think the only next level we have is for when something happens, Swidz to peer directly into his webcam, get super close, and just mouth "get wrecked" directly down the camera.
Still, though, Yalla has got a reasonable sized board, but there is Risky Skipper, there is Double Armor Smith, there is the Ankar. There's also that Kobold sticky figure, the subtle gasp that I laughed at a little bit earlier on.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful response to a Warglaive. So Swidz by no means in too much trouble as it stands right now, and the fact that Altruist got just dealt with was huge.
Now Switz has the luxury of going for maximum bombs as opposed to maximum armor. A lot of the time, you quite often feel like you have to go Armor Smith first in this scenario to be able to get maximum armor gain because you've been pressured throughout the early game. That is absolutely not the case here, and I think Yalla has just tapped out to that turn because it was about as good as it was going to get from Swidz. That was a dream curve from Swidz. There it is, the self-congratulatory round of applause we've come to know and love in GM Season 3 here in 2020. This does really look like a whole new Swidz. It is very much night and day from what we saw from Swidz in 2019 overall, where he seemed quite reserved. He seemed a little bit nervous at times. Certainly didn't feel comfortable in the interviews that we conducted, but he's not the strongest English speaker. We certainly won't hold that against him, but didn't really feel like we were getting to know him that well. And honestly, just through this personality being shown on camera without interviews, I'm feeling like I'm learning more about Swid's personality than I did through the interviews last year.
Yeah, and also that there's always that element of confidence almost just leads to even more success, right? In a game like this, because if you start doing well, you think, okay, my decisions are good, my lineup choices are good, I'm winning. and then that makes you play better just because you feel more comfortable. So it kind of just starts to stack in on itself. And I think we've seen that all season. Swidz has looked comfortable, looked excited to play, looked pretty upbeat, even when things maybe haven't gone his way in certain matches, certain games. But overall, we've seen some pretty good play from Swidz, and I think he's just enjoying the game right now, enjoying Grandmasters. And if he wins this next game, he's going to be enjoying it even more because we're going to see him tomorrow.
Indeed, but he now has a bit of a problem in front of him because
Right.
it is Druid left remaining up against this Demon Hunter, and he's escaped once with his life intact, but we'll see if he can do it again because that Starfall is going to need to cooperate with him yet again, or, of course, the absolute turbo nuts draw that any Druid is capable of that can still beat even the Demon Hunter if their curve doesn't line up perfectly well on the other side.
Well, let's get into it. Wild Growth keep there for Swidz. We did just miss that mulligan just a tiny bit there, so we'll see what happened. I don't know if you saw it subtle, but Yalla, on the other hand, Beaming Sidekick, Mana Burn, and a Metamorphosis. And didn't really talk too much about Yalla's Demon Hunter as of yet, but it does have those 2 Bone Chewer Brawlers. But the Mana Burn I spoke about yesterday, that against Druid, you have they signal what they want to do with the turn so heavily. You know, with the Mount Seller turns come in, you know there could be a Glowfly turn coming. Same with Ysera. That these Mana Burns can get some pretty incredible work done.
Is this the juice? Looks like it might be the juice.
Looks pretty good, doesn't it? And we're going to just see the Sidekick high five over the next 2 turns.
Yeah, you can see Swidz. Yeah, look at that reaction. Swidz essentially saw his opening hand and went, okay, I have a plan. Now I wait and see how much damage I have. Like, what is the toll I have to pay to play all of these cards? And
when you want to play them.
It could have been anything from a 1-2 to a Battle Fiend that would have had, 4 or 5 attack by the time he actually ended up killing it. So I think this is best case scenario, and you saw how happy Swidz was with the result.
Sands of time run low.
Also, now like Coin Innovate, they really do just open up some extra options here for Swidz.
I love Jarla's turn management so much. Have you noticed this? Like, every single turn where he thinks about things, picks up his minion, hits his opponent in the face. It's like, look, let's get that done. Right, now let's have a think. Okay.
Yeah. It's like, well, what always happens is the phrase, right?
It's great.
Like, this minion always hits Swidz for 1. Get it done. Right. Now that we live in the current timeline, what happens?
So, okay, my opponent's at 29. That's important information for me to structure my turnaround.
Play the 2-drop. Now that it does mean he can land a Beaming Sidekick if he wants on this Swampooze, and suddenly,
Indeed.
once you've got minions on 4 health against Druid, it becomes much less likely they get cleaned up. Is he really going to go for Vulpera? Okay. Yeah, just get the attacks in first. The attacks always go in. Now we're
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Gets them done. And he starts thinking.
I do like this. The pickup of the Unboing just makes this turn feel even more powerful. Oh! Okay.
Oh!
Okay. Right, let's think about things for a second. Is there a world in which Swidz, not this turn, of course, but next turn potentially goes like innovate, overflow, then Glowfly with other cards available?
Maybe?
I'm looking at it and I don't think it's the craziest thing I've ever said. I mean, that's not really a hard bar to beat, is it?
It's not,
no. But
you have set the bar incredibly low over the years, Raven.
It's all part of the plan. Means I can get away with more crazy things.
So many
It makes sense to me.
Aren't you going to go Starfall into 1 Innovate plus Overflow most of the time? Isn't that more likely? I feel like that's more likely.
Well, my point being is, if you can... Does Starfall actually stop that much right now? It definitely depends on what Yalla's going to play. Of course, I'm saying it's purely from Switz's side.
I will still find
Because now, does he Starfall the 3-5, right? Or does he just go for the heal plan? He's going to take, what, 6, 7, 8? He's got to take 10, 11, potentially 12. Can heal for 5, go up to 19.
Now Yalla the one feeling it. This curve has worked out perfectly, and yeah, I think from Switz's side, you can expect this maybe to be your opponent's Satyr Overseer swing kind of turn, right? And then Starfall is the nuts. However, if that was your opponent's hand, would they have beaming sidekicked their Acidic Swampus? Probably not. Maybe they still would, because it's enough. But I imagine they'd be holding on to the resource. But right now, with Kane coming down,
How curious.
there is very little that Swidz can do to answer this board state.
Yeah, and this is the issue with Starfall, isn't it? It's a great card in those moments. You do need to clear up these small boards, but as I mentioned, the sidekicks help out with that for the Demon Hunter so much, because this isn't Quest Druid. You don't get to do both, right? It's either the AoE sweep for 2, or it's to kill one thing for 5, and Swidz would love to be Quest Druid right now, because that turn would be immense.
Right. This is 11 showing, 12 showing with the hero power. Yeah, this was kind of what I was leading towards. Like, I just don't feel like Vate Flow was going to win the game.
Yeah, after seeing the Kane, completely agree with you
You're
there.
good, Yalla. You're good. Don't worry about it. You're good.
Yep.
Just have a quick count.
Everything face first.
Everything
and then
goes face.
reconsider.
Yep. Then you have a thing. Exactly.
Yeah, that is going to be the lethal, though. Yalla is going to take the win, and Swidz looked like he had the solid hand, but could not quite get there with the help of those sidekicks from Yalla, with the help of that Kane. Just too much help on the board. Yalla's going to take it, and just like ball control yesterday, came in at the top seed and leaves very quickly as he's booked his spot into tomorrow, into the final day of Hearthstone Grandmasters here, Season 1. Pretty excited, honestly, to see Yalla go through.
And looking statuesque in his victory there is our Yalla, but I think it was a very well-played series. It continues to be from Yalla. He's one of the hardest players in the world to pick holes in. He's just so solid, so consistent, and just such an incredible performer that, you know, this has come to be a given at this point that Yalla will be continuing to be successful. But he has replicated what ball control did yesterday, making his day as easy as possible, now pushing himself through to the top 4 bracket on Sunday for that spot at the World Championship. Switz fans, though, do not despair just yet. His day is not done. He still has another chance due to the merits of his positioning going into this. He will fall down into the lower bracket, but in an advanced position, so we'll be seeing him a little bit later on in the decider match.
Yeah, and just a reminder as well, you had in you talked about in the hot takes, is Yalla with that incredible win rate in Grandmasters, should he be deemed the best, if not one of the best players in the world? Well, soon, he's only a couple of matches away from booking a spot at the World Championship, so maybe we just get for him to just decide that question on his own, right, due to his own performance. So we'll see how that pans out, but let's take a look at how the bracket looks for now and see the impact as that has made, as Yalla, again, just being in that top seed meant he potentially only had to play one match today, and he did, because he won. He beat Swidz. Swidz is going to be knocked down into that decider match, still gets another go at it, but in the meantime, we are going to have to go to RDU versus Silvername to see the winner then will play against versus Swidz. So it's going to be plenty more Hearthstone to come up yet, Sol, but so far I am just happy to see Yalla do this well. I think he deserves it.
Yeah, I think he absolutely does. I think, deserving can be a dirty word, because, a lot of people, when you say someone deserves things, they then say that you're saying that someone else doesn't, but that's not the case. I think a lot of players in Europe deserve the success that Yalla does, but just because we're singling out one individual player and saying that they are top tier and, they continue to be so, does not take anything away from the achievements of the other players.
Of course, yeah. Yep, so plenty more Hearthstone to come up. We do have that elimination match and then the decider match, of course, in Group B to final out who is going to be playing tomorrow. But also, just another reminder, we do have another relegation match today. There are going to be 3 played over this weekend. We had 1 yesterday, there'll be 1 today, and then tomorrow we're going to have the final relegation match, which will decide who this 3rd relegation spot is going to go to and who, unfortunately, we're going to have to say goodbye to at the end of this season. But for now, we're going to go to a break while we set up our next match. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone Grandmasters.